we're in this position where, because Frenelite says this a lot, and I think it's funny, because we were never cool or never really mainstream in any way, we never became uncool.
I love that, dude. Frontalot he seems like such a dope dude. I've had like brief interactions with him, like on Twitter and whatnot, but he seems awesome, dude. And like his music is bananas, dude. Like he's such a talented dude. Like I love that guy. I don't think he realizes what a big fan I am of his.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hello, everyone. The MC Lars Podcast is back. And that was a little preview of this amazing interview with Weerd Science, a.k.a. Josh Eppard of Coheed and Cambria. And I'm going to start each episode now with a little intro so you hear like a little window into what we're going to talk about later. So that's what's up. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy Labor Day. This is episode 101. It is September 7th, 2020. And this week's episode is brought to you by the following Patreon Lartians. Shout out to the new ones, Dean Ritz, Midlife Stasis, and Eric Rasmussen. And shout out to the old ones, Jesse Kiefer, Some Name, and Justin Landfear. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for hanging with me through the social media break I did. I'd never done an experiment like this where I was just like, okay, I'm off. I was off for over a month. Did a lot of reading. I spent a lot of time with my family. I worked on a lot of music, and I did a lot of podcasts. So they're kind of front loaded. I did this podcast with Josh a few weeks ago. And before we get into it, I want to play this week's letter to Atlas. And this week's letter to Atlas is from my friend MC Snacks, who's been doing the Hatchet Chat YouTube videos with me, where we review all the albums ICP put out through their label, all the artists they signed, and all the albums they released. Every other week, we have a video up. So this is a little message from my Canadian friend, Brian. Is he sleeping? Is he pooping? Just checking in. How's a little boy doing? These are some messages that you left. Wishing our little baby boy the best. Now it's time for Letters to Atlas.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Yo, this is Brian calling from Newfoundland, Canada, and I'm actually calling looking for Atlas. He was born 2 days ago. And of course, his parents are over the moon, super happy. And Atlas, buddy, you're so lucky to have such cool and talented parents. And they're so lucky to have you, such a cool, healthy baby boy. I just wanted to call to welcome you to planet Earth. And I hope to meet you someday, buddy. Peace.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. And I know Atlas will too. Our son is over 4 months old now. He's growing great. He's doing great. He's laughing. He's a lot of fun. So shout out to Atlas for making life awesome. All right, so let's get into it. Weerd Science. Now, some of you may have seen Weerd Science with me on tour in the UK in the spring of 2011. It was him, me, MC Chris, and Akira the Dawn on a very, very long UK tour. And then I did the Warped Tour with Josh and my friend John on drums and my friend Mike Russo on bass and guitar. And we got the Warped Tour gig because Kevin Lyman, the guy who picks all the bands, was a fan of Coheed and Cambria and Weerd Science, which was Josh Eppard's side project. So let's talk about small world stuff, how small the world is. So before I had a podcast, I had a show on Sirius XM called The MC Lars Show. And it was on for a few years, and people would recommend cool music. And it was interesting because it was pre-social media, but I'd get emails and people would hit me up and send me stuff. And I got a request to play Weerd Science. Now, I knew Coheed and Cambria because I had seen them at Skate and Surf, one of the first festivals I played. They were one of the headliners on one of the first days. And I was very impressed by their drummer. As anyone who's seen the band knows, Josh is very technical but energetic, amazing drummer. And so I was intrigued that he had a rap side project. So Friends and Nervous Breakdowns was the first album. And I remember I listened to it a ton. And I talk about this story on the podcast, but the day I graduated college, I went camping in Yosemite the next day with my aunt and uncle, and I had his CD, and I listened to it in the car like 20 times driving from Stanford to Yosemite. So I always associated him with this happy, victorious memory in my life. And I love his flow, and I love his style, and I love everything about that record. He kind of reminded me of Jamie Madrox from Twisted. Some of you might notice that like they have a similar timbre and cadence, but it's a very technical, passionate, amazing style of rapping. And so I'd play him a lot on my Sirius radio show. Years later, so he was kind of offline and hard to get a hold of because I always wanted to like work with him or reach out to him. He was working on this album called Sick Kids, and he had this really cool Flash animation website that talked about it. But he was going through some addiction stuff, and he'd left Coheed Cambria, so he was going through some hard times. So he didn't put the record out. But I linked with him again. Randomly, we were at a laundromat somewhere upstate New York, and his friend Kwame, who is a dude who rapped with him and worked with him, saw us with our laminates hanging out at a laundromat, my band and I, and he said, "Who are you guys? What band are you guys?" And we saw his tattoo, and he was just a friendly dude, and we're like, "Oh, we love Weerd Science." And that got back to Josh. So fast forward, after that, a few years after that, my friend Mike Russo, my bass player, my guitarist, used to book college shows, right? And he booked a show with Josh's other band, Terrible Things, which featured Fred from Taking Back Sunday after Fred had left Taking Back Sunday. And it turned out Josh was aware of us. So one thing led to another, and my former manager, Howie, told Kevin Lyman, who runs the Warped Tour, that Josh and I were working on music together, and we were thinking of going on tour as a duo. So we got the offer to play Warped Tour, and it all came from that meeting. But meanwhile, I was trying to launch Horse Records, sign other artists, and branch out like a lot of my favorite rappers had done, right? Like put out other artists, put on artists they admire. So we raised money through a Kickstarter for Josh. We got him a publicist. And it was an interesting learning experience, learning that like a lot of dealing with running a label is being on the phone with an artist manager talking about like the minutia of, oh, the text should be this size. The artist wants this and that. And it became more of, I realized I didn't want to run a record label because it wasn't too creative after a certain point. But I learned a lot from Josh, and he was very patient with me putting out his album. We got him some good press. We did these tours together. I went on later to do Warped Tour twice on my own without him, but we stayed in touch. We played shows since, and he's put out tons of music after his brief stint on Horse Records. So we talk about that more on the second episode. But anyway, this intro is long. This is my interview with Josh from Coheed Cambria, aka Weerd Science. I'm really glad to be back doing this podcast. Thank you all for sticking with me. The end of this episode, it kind of cuts off abruptly, and then I'm going to play How to Be an Indie Rapper, which was our second song together, which was on Lars Attacks. So check it out. This is my interview with Weerd Science. Hello, my friends. I'm here with Josh Eppard, a.k.a. Weerd Science, a.k.a. drummer of Coheed Cambria, a.k.a. the first signing that I ever had on my label when that was a thing, a.k.a. the reason I got to play Warped Tour. And Josh is a horror movie expert as well as a rapper and great drummer. And yeah, I thought it'd be cool if we talk a little bit about how we met and then talk a little bit about horror movies because you know a ton about that. So that's what's up.
Well, I know a ton about specific horror movies, but let me also just commend you on that many AKAs. I feel like Old Dirty. That was amazing. Yeah, man. You've had a very long, interesting career, and it's kind of fortuitous. We linked because my guitarist, Mike Russo, had booked a show with your old band, Terrible Things, right? I believe so, but I was always aware of MC Lars. Like, people would talk about you. I knew of your music, and I knew there was some kind of connection. As funny as this sounds, and it's like, this is not like a story that's all that unique, but like a buddy of mine, I think, ran into you somewhere, and we were always really gassed that you even knew who Weerd Science was. And that news like kind of permeated through the group, and we were like, oh, that's so awesome. So we were always like aware of you on the periphery. But then, yeah, Mike Russo booked me and Freddie's band, Terrible Things, and somehow he hooked it up that there was going to be something going on. But I think that was pretty much the start of it, and really kind of kicked off a whole section of my life, Lars. I don't want to try to get like too deep too early here, but there's a whole giant portion of my life that's really like centered around you. And when I look back at like the trajectory of my kind of re-emerging as an artist and just as a human being that can exist in this world, you have such a big piece of that I could never properly thank you. Not that you're asking me to thank you, but I just want you to know that, and it's hugely important to me.
That's awesome, man. That means a lot, Josh. And I remember meeting, was it Kwame? We met him at a laundromat, and he had the Weerd Science tattoo. Maybe that's
it, dude. That's exactly. And then he came, and he was like, dude, I met this dude, MC Lars. And we're like, MC Lars? And he's like, yeah, I think so. We're like, for real? And that was really exciting to us. And And then we got to work together. Yeah, it's almost like destiny, and that was really neat. Dude, we went to Europe together. That was insane. What an insane trip! Like,
I know. Oh God, here's how I found about you. I was doing a show on Sirius for a few years, and I'd have fans request stuff, and I had this one fan that was always talking about Friends and Nervous Breakdowns, and so I bought that record, and then when I graduated college, I went camping with my aunt and uncle in Yosemite, and driving out to meet them, I played that record probably like 50 times. You know how like when you have one CD in the car, you'll listen to it a ton. And so
of course,
I associated that moment with graduating college and the second phase of my life. And it was always like interesting because you weren't super active or easy to get a hold of like in those days. So it was kind of
not at all, dude. I was basically hiding. I was basically trying to get no one to get in touch with me. A really great plan for an artist to just hide away. But yeah, no one could get, but somehow we linked up and it felt right, which is really, it's even wilder because I pretty much was hiding, dude. It was a really strange time for me.
So if you don't mind, like you left Coheed because you had some personal stuff. And I guess the story as I see it, like we got on Warped Tour because Kevin Lyman was a fan of Weerd Science, and Howie Abrams, my former manager, was like, oh, they're doing stuff together. And Kevin was like, cool. So we got hired to do that gig, and like it was definitely a grind, but it was definitely like opened the door for me in the Warped Tour scene. But then Coheed saw that you were like back doing stuff, touring, doing like really hard tour, and you kind of got the invitation to rejoin the band. I don't know how much you want to speak on that, but I think I remember that being a catalyst for your return to your first band.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I think when you say that I left Coheed, I left right before I was going to be fired. It was a foregone conclusion that I'd have been fired. Dude, I put those guys through. I mean, they deserve a lot of credit for keeping the friendship alive, accepting my apology. But I think you hit the nail on the head, dude. They saw from afar, they said, well, God, if we're going to speak honestly here, and I would expect nothing less, junkies lie, man. Right? Every junkie's clean, right? No, dude, I'm clean now. Do you think if I called them and said, hey, man, I'm clean, that they'd have been like, yeah, I'm sure you're lying because that's all you've done to us for years is lie, lie, lie. So then there was no communication. And then they see, not only am I out on Warped Tour with Weerd Science, but I'm out there with Terrible Things. I'm doing 2 shows a day on Warped Tour.
Right.
They got word that I'm up in the morning hanging posters and I'm doing it, and they say, wow, man, maybe it definitely had something to do with them saying like, hey man, maybe Josh is like, maybe he's earned the chance to say sorry. Cause honestly, I needed to, dude. I had destroyed any friendship and any semblance of trust with those guys. And I'm willing to talk about any of it. Cause if you don't, you got to own up to it. Right. I mean, my life, I've been gifted a lot through honesty. And if I had known it was that simple, I'd have been honest in 2007, man. But I just did. It took a long time to realize that honesty could really kind of grant me all these things that I wanted, not in a selfish way, but you got to accept responsibility. And I got a chance to do that. And dude, Warped Tour with you specifically. When I think of Warped Tour, I mainly think of us on stage. Like that was kind of the main thing. And I mean, no disrespect to Terrible Things, but Terrible Things was kind of at the end. I think we knew it was the end. Andy Jackson from Hot Rod Circuit. He wasn't there anymore. We're kind of, I don't want to make it sound mean, but it felt like kind of beating a dead horse. I think Fred knew it was over. So when I think of Warped Tour, I think of me and you on Warped. That was the main thing I was doing there. We were on the bus together. And I'm when I say I'm forever grateful, that's one of the many reasons, dude. I think showing not just Coheed, the world, showing that, hey, I can still do this. I mean, that was a surreal experience, dude, because I also remember like thinking Warped Tour, oh, these are my people. And then you realize, oh, it's been 5 years and everyone's different. And I'm 30 years old and everyone has gotten even younger. Like most of the bands are like 16 years old. And, but it was awesome, dude. I'm so thankful that I got to learn on stage from you. I learned so much that I utilize to this day on that tour. I wouldn't change it for the world. And we had fun, dude. I mean, we saw some wild shit, dude. Like Blood on the Dance Floor playing every night. I never saw anything like that. God, you see all the stuff now coming out about
creepy stuff. Yeah.
Super creepy. And I remember, dude, but I felt like, oh, maybe I'm just old. I'm like the parent here or something, but it was a little weird. Like, my man like fake jerking off on the stage and literally 12-year-old girls. You know, it was a little strange for me, but I was like, maybe I'm just old, you know? Now looking back, it's like, holy shit. Yeah, I guess it was pretty weird. There's some, I don't want to speak on it too much, but it seems like there's some really creepy stuff going on. And yeah, I feel like that dude might get in some trouble, and it seems like it might be deserved. So,
well, do you see Violent J from ICP put out like a hit on him on their social media? Like, this is Juggalo enemy number one. No one treats kids like this. If you see this guy, give him a beat down. And
I did, dude. Yeah. I did. Yeah, that shit is for real. It's crazy, man. Fucking crazy. But those guys, you know, for all, like, just in passing, you know, we didn't like hang super hard with them. Seemed like nice guys. They were blowing up. They had enormous crowds on that Skull Candy stage. And it was like a real eye opener for me, because I was like, whoa, this shit is crazy bad to me. I thought it was the worst shit I ever heard. But that's music, man.
Yeah.
That's taste. Everybody's different. And like now I almost get it now more than like then. Maybe I was still existing in what I thought was the current bubble, and I got like a rude awakening. But what a great learning experience. And, you know, again, super thankful for that. But, and I don't mean to diss anybody, dude. Everybody's different. Everyone's art has as much merit as anything I've ever done. I get made fun of all the time for stuff I make. I get called all kinds of names. But if we're being honest, yeah, dude, I watched Blood on the Dance Floor and was dumbfounded by how bad I thought it was. But whatever, that's just me. I don't matter.
I remember once, I think it was Oregon, we were playing, and like you and I had some good crowds. We had some small crowds, but there was like a line, their autographed line was like in front of our stage, so people couldn't get to it. And so you sang one of their like, I think the song Bewitched, you sang the melody, and they looked at you.
You got me bewitched, because I'm under your spell.
And they were looking at you like laughing.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, of course they're laughing. They're like, who is this old fat guy singing Blood on the Dance Floor? Then they probably loved it. I remember that. That was insane. And the guys in the band were actually really nice dudes. Like the guys that actually played, like the drummer and the guitar player, they're really nice guys. Yeah, what a crazy experience, dude.
Nuts.
Just so crazy. And Yellow Wolf and Greaves.
Yeah.
Big Chocolate. Dude, what a great, I mean, we've done so many tours in our lives, right? A lot of them they all blend together to like one memory. Warped Tour, I remember so many specific things, and I think that's really important. And I think it probably speaks a lot to like how much those memories really like matter to me.
Yeah, man. And I also think like it was interesting because I was trying to wear too many hats. I feel like the label thing, you know, it was weird with the business because I was like, oh, well, we got to recoup this, and the Kickstarter's going towards this and that. And like now, if we'd done it, I would have been just like, okay, Josh, let me help you. Like you manage your own business. We'll split the bus costs. We'll split the fees and keep the business more transparent, because like I was trying to use like the UK tour and the Kickstarter and everything as a way to like help you grow. But I didn't know all the right decisions. And like I was, as a fan, so excited for Sick Kids to come out, which was the second record, which you'd been talking about, which when Ernie played me, I was so excited to try to promote. So it was like, nowadays, it would have been a totally different thing, but this is almost 10 years ago. Like, you had a lot of faith in me, and I know, like, sometimes I drop the ball as, like, a label dude.
Lars, honest to God, I hear 100% where you're coming from. I don't think you dropped the ball. Your intentions were always 100% pure. Drop the ball. Dude, you put yourself on the line to help me time and time again. There's no way in my heart that I harbor any, please take this into your heart. I don't think that at all. I'm really appreciative for how hard you tried. It underwhelmed, man. It's like a fucking weird project that like certain people it speaks to. Yeah. And like, if anything, man, I felt bad it didn't perform better. Or like, you know, of course I wanted it to come out and wanted people to like flip out and say it was really great. And I was trying to like figure out being sober or like, who am I? What am I? You know? But dude, you've only ever tried to help me. And again, that just goes back to how, appreciative isn't even, whatever's 10 steps past appreciative. I'm supposed to have this vast vocabulary. I can barely speak. I love you so much, man. No one else, my whole life would be different if I didn't meet you, Lars. So, that says it right there.
That's nice, Josh. Thank you. And it's cool that it's so cool, like kicking off this podcast, seeing how reciprocated it was, because like the last thing I'll say is, you know, I did the Robot Kills record, which was like kind of ska pop punk record, but I wanted to do more like serious, more elaborate hip hop. And so having you on Lars Attacks was so dope. Having KRS-One, having Sage Francis, like it was like three of my favorite rappers that I'd loved for the past few years. It was like I could make a hip hop record that you helped me produce because you introduced me to people like Chris and Dave, which gave it that professional sheen. We recorded part of it at Applehead, which was a studio up in Woodstock that you hooked me up with. And it was cool to learn from you and for you to look at what I was doing, not as just like a nerdy pop punk novelty thing, which I felt like a lot of hip hop heads maybe saw me as, like the nerdcore thing, which is in some ways limited. And it was cool to be able to grow as a rapper, learn from you. And like, I remember once when we were in England, we were doing the 23 remix at a studio, and I had a flow, and I was like, "Oh, that's that." I did a lyric where I had like a syncopated rhythm. I was like, "Let's retrack it," and you were like, "No, Lars, that's what makes you a good rapper. Keep those weird little inflections." So I learned from you as a MC, maybe as in a way you learned from me on a business tip, and so that I think was kind of like a serendipitous and like a special year, you know?
Yeah, serendipitous is a good word for it. There's definitely like a real two-way street going. And, you know, it's like learning is a strange thing. It's like, I always want to be willing to learn, but not everything sticks for me. I've noticed this as I get older. And certain experiences just, if I could like, you know, quantify it and siphon it down, I'd have everything stick, but it doesn't. But a lot of stuff with you, Andrew, just stuck. It's stuck for some reason. Like I said, if I could quantify why, I'd figure out why some things go in and out. And I've taken so much from those years. Business, sure, but also things, you know, a lot of performance stuff, things on stage. I remember like early on Warped Tour watching how you held a mic, and it changed how I held a mic, and all of a sudden I sounded better. And here I am supposed to be a professional, and I'm like, oh, I guess I've been doing that wrong for 20 years. Jesus Christmas.
Like holding the mic lower?
Yeah, I think it was lower, but you would angle it at certain times, and you just had a comfort level that I had not yet achieved. I'm a shy person for as boisterous. I mean, that's what Weerd Science was, dude. It was the opposite of me, you know? But even in songs on like that first track, like Joshua, They're Laughing at You. Hey, that's not a song like a real confident guy writes. I mean, I always feel like I'm getting laughed at, or, you know, I feel introverted, and around my friends I can be the total opposite. And that's kind of, you know, Weerd Science was about that. It was kind of about, I mean, it really started to like, I wanted to be better. All the bully kids would rap, right? Like, or they pick on kids, they're assholes. And I was like, these kids can't rap. I'll write one rap, it'll be better than theirs. And it was. And I'd go and I'd rap, and that's how this whole thing started. It was like, wow, you know, and I still to this day, here I am, I'm 40 years old, and like, I'm so immensely proud of Weerd Science, even though there's songs from like when I was a kid that I hear and I can totally cringe. Of course, I think that's true for any artist, but specifically really super true for me. But like, the fact that it spoke to anyone, and the fact that we were able to put out not just Sick Kids, but then 3 other records, and we're working on a record now, and that I get to do this. I really enjoy rapping, and I'm like more comfortable about it right now than ever before. And I would have never got here if it wasn't for like our experience together. And just when I bring up comfort, that's something you can't really, I don't know if you can teach it. So maybe it resided in me, but like, if you were to look at the first Warped Tour show and the last Warped Tour show, I was a completely different performer. Fred told me that. Fred from Terrible Things.
That's tight. That's interesting.
Oh, it was so tight because Fred was a rock guy. Like, I think it was always kind of silly to Fred that I rapped, and like, he had so come around on it. Yeah. People like, I don't know, you kind of get goofed on. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, people are like, oh, you rap? Oh God, cool, man. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to, it spoke to me, and I make this kind of music. Yeah. What's the problem? Like, but to see like Fred, and Fred's wife even came, and she's like, dude, you're like a completely different performer. And I really owe that all to you, Lars. I basically was just copying you from the way you walk to the way you talked in between songs. That was something I didn't possess. And I just learned, I came so far in such a short time. I mean, Warped Tour feels real long when you're on it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty short run, you know, to learn that much. Shit, I wish we could do another Warped Tour, all this Warped Tour talk. Man, it's making me miss it.
It was, and you know, it was like talking about, so ICP, like in their book, Violent J talks about this concept of leyenda, which is all or nothing, which talks about when they started Psychopathic Records. So this is the last time I'll reference them, but like they've been on my mind recently. And he talks about it's all or nothing, right? And that summer before, like you were with me when we were in England on this long tour. People usually do England for a week. We were there for like a month as a warm up. I broke up with this person that I was like, felt like I thought I was going to marry, and like it was just very emotional. I was going through a lot personally. I was trying to like not let it affect the business, but because of that, it was all or nothing. Like our Warped Tour experience, from the postering to the networking to the show to the rehearsals, it had to be, it couldn't fail. And so I think we both came at it with that energy. And I want to shout out Mike and John, because they're just such a great rhythm section. Like having a live band, man, gave us the confidence. Dude. Like they killed it.
Yeah. And lifelong friends, dude. I count Mike and John as two of my close friends. I love those guys.
They worked hard, man. And they're,
they worked hard and they loved you. And I mean, I couldn't love Mike Russo and John. I could not love those guys anymore. I love them so much. And you know, from experience, not everyone you tour with becomes a lifelong friend, right? But Mike and John are lifelong friends, dude. Not just friends with me. Ernie's good friends with John. Yeah. Somehow John's friends with like half my crew from Kingston. He's just such a likable guy. Everybody knows John Longley. Everybody fucking knows John. Yeah, so again, thankful for that. I love those guys dearly. And they busted their asses and killed it every night.
I know. And so it's like being it's interesting. Like if you're part of a band, like maybe you can speak on this in a minute. Like if you're a drummer for like an amazing band like you are, and the first time I saw you play was at Skate and Surf. I was hanging out with the Brand New guys because I was working with their manager, and we watched from side stage and watching you drum. I was like, this band's power in a lot of ways comes from the like intricate, focused drumming. And I think that's something that like has always been true about Coheed. But John and I would watch the Coheed DVDs like early in our career, and like looking at you as a rapper, you can see how there's similar things with syncopation and rhythm. But as a rapper, having a band, the band doesn't get as much props as if you are like a band like The Roots or Coheed, where all the musicians have an identity. Being a backup band for a solo artist, I think in some ways can be a hard gig.
Hell yes, dude. Hell yes.
Yeah. So like John would always talk about how he appreciated that you'd give him tips and tricks and show him stuff. And like, I think it was a good learning experience from them. But to do that, they had a lot of humility, you know, and
big time, dude. It's tough, man. You know, no one is a kid like practicing in their garage, imagining getting passed over for an autograph. You know, no kid is like in their basement, like that's imagining sad. Getting shoved out of the way at the meet and greet so they can talk to the singer. And, you know, that's a part of like, you know, a lot of musicians are kind of shy. And it's funny that we're like immersed in this world with people that are the opposite of shy, which are frontmen. You get a guy like Claudio from Coheed who is like immensely shy in his real life. That's not an act. My man is shy. But like, just like Weerd Science, like him on stage with a guitar strapped around him, that's the opposite of Claudio Sanchez. That's this other thing. But like, he had something that I didn't really have. Like, I was too, let's call a spade a spade. I was too afraid, man. I was afraid to stand in front. I give a lot of credit to anybody, but that does have the courage to do that. But in my experience, a lot of the players, the guitar players, the drummers, the bass players, they feel the calling to play music, but they just didn't have that thing where it's like, I've got to be in front. And then, you know, what comes along with it is some of those moments. Dude, I've had my heart like broken. You know, it's like, I wanted to play drums in a band. Hey, last I checked, man, my favorite bands all had drummers, you know? I didn't realize that like sometimes you're made to feel like an inch tall. And this actually happened at a show. And a guy, we're taking our meet and greet picture. And it's like, fair enough, dude. Like Coheed fans are, I hate to sound so cliche, but like they really are the best fans in the world. By and large, they're smart, creative, funny people. And I count scores of them as like real lifelong friends now. But then you get some fans that they just want to take a picture with Claudio. And that's fine. That's fair enough, dude. I don't want to I don't have to be in the picture or whatever. But a guy literally shoved me out of the way. And then I never felt smaller than as I inched back into the picture. Like, I didn't really want to. It was like almost that force of like, this is what we do. We take the picture. Yeah. My man pushed me. He was drunk, I'm sure. He had a big beard, big guy, he had a jersey on. And he's there like showing off with his lady. And they get right in the middle, and he shoves me out of the way, and no one like really said anything. But that was probably the smallest I ever felt as I inch back up to the picture, but I didn't want to touch him. So I like stayed a good like few inches away from him, and I'm like in the picture, all like trying to smile, but I wanted to cry. It was like, damn, dude,
that's hard. You
hate me so much. You want to shove me out of the way. And then I was a little upset, maybe not rightfully so, but I wish some of the guys from the band or the crew or the tour manager, anybody was like, hey, you don't get to push the band members.
Yeah.
No one saw it really is what happened. But yeah, I was a little upset about it. And then I had this bit that I would do. I'd say, why do I have to be made to feel like that? I want to come here and give 100% of my energy on stage for the people that give a shit. If this guy's going to push me, like, why do I have to be out here? And then I was like, I'll just stop being a baby. And that only happened once. So this is out of however many thousands of like pictures we've taken at the meet and greet. But it was brutal. And it is just part of this business. Not everybody is the star. And for somebody like me, you'd better get used to it quick, because you're in a band with like a bona fide rock star. So I always looked at it on the flip side of that as it being really professional and something that I was proud of, that we didn't let like such earthly things as like jealousy kind of get in the way. Lord knows early Coheed, we had every other problem, but like I understood that Claude was kind of like a force to be reckoned with. He was my favorite frontman. I was a fan first. We would play shows together, and we would open up for each other's bands. Like we would go down to Nyack and play and open up for them. They'd come up to Kingston and they'd open up for my band. And I wanted to be a part of his universe. So I knew what I was getting into. But yeah, humility is something that, we're all, right? We all are human. We all have feelings. And sometimes it can be really tough. And giving John and Mike credit it just shows what a good guy you are, Lars, honestly, man. Because I don't think a lot of people would even take the time to do that. And I think that that's really special and speaks to how unique and thoughtful of a guy you are. But thanks, John and Mike certainly deserve tons of credit, because hell yeah, anybody in a backup band, hey, anybody listening to this, show the backup band some love. Those guys are up. No one's busting their ass harder than the drummer. I'll tell you that right now. My man is working. Show him some love. It'll make his day. Be the one person that's like, hey man, great show. Can I get a picture? They'll love you for life.
Right. Well, and also it's interesting to see how John, like both those guys, I did songs about kind of ribbing them. I don't know if you've like the Clean Up Your House. Of course,
yeah.
And they both took it in stride, but it was a little, I don't know, it's like hazing in a way. But they both then have developed their own fans. Like Mike Russo, when he'd be CC'd on emails when he'd be tour managing, opening bands would be like, hey, Mike Russo, did you cut your hair? Like he has his own little like.
Oh, totally, dude. Yeah. and believe me, they love it. They love it. So, and they should, dude. That's awesome. I mean, that's just one of those weird. I mean, we could speak about it in like terms of like this very small world of the Lars, but like in general, backup bands and whatnot, man, those are some of the things like at least I didn't think about it when I was practicing in the garage. All my favorite bands, I knew the names of the drummers. The world kind of changed too in like terms of bands. Like a lot of people don't know the names of everybody in the band, and that's fine. That's just kind of the way it is. And, I can live with that. I'm probably more, hey man, Claudio being such a shy guy, he doesn't always want to take pictures and do all that stuff. And like, I kind of have the best of both worlds, because I get a lot of love being in Coheed Cambria. Like I don't normally get pushed out of pictures. I look out in the crowd and I see signs of Josh, we love you. And I get enough love that it's good, but I don't get like overwhelmed. So I almost like feel like I beat the system. It's like the perfect balance of attention versus like not over too much attention. So don't take it as I'm complaining, but there were definitely times where you had to just be aware that like, stardom creates a shadow and you might have to live in it, but you're expected to work just as hard, and you're expected to sacrifice and put it all out there. And I looked at it as professional. I always took that as professional, to be able to kind of absorb that and weather that and still bring your A game and not get, because it destroys tons of bands. It destroys tons of bands.
Sure.
The bass player figures out like, wait a second, I'm not the star. I was the popular one in high school. What? This isn't my band. Fuck this. I'm out of here. Pardon my crass language.
Or I wrote the hit song, so blah, blah, blah. Like the Dead Milkmen, it's a good example. Like their punk rock girl song, Joe Jack sings, but Rodney kind of started the band, so it was like weird for them, but they've maintained and done okay, and they get along. I've interviewed both of them, and they talked about that, and that's a weird thing. Like certain songs, someone might know feature a member that aren't like the rest of the band's catalog.
Yeah, dude, totally. And all of it comes down to like communication. And if you don't have communication, you're not going to be able to weather those storms. But there's a lot of stuff that comes up. You're talking about art. It's really easy to think of art as just like, oh yeah, man, we all get together and create. But then, there's feelings involved, and there's egos, and there's personalities, and all that stuff has like, burned down many a band. I feel pretty like proud that Coheed is it, because Lord knows we had problems, I'm still standing here at 40 years old in my band that I was in when I was 19, and I'm pretty proud of that. I'm seriously proud of that, beyond pretty proud of that. I'm really, really, I think we kind of hang our hat on that and take a lot of pride in it. So, yeah.
I mean, and also, so Josh, that's awesome that you guys have had that longevity. You said something that made me think about our next topic. So Claudio, you talked about how he'd stand on stage and that his acts kind of makes him a superhero. And I think about that, and I think about the Weerd Science brand, and I think about how sometimes, it's like this dichotomy of the shy, lonely, introverted artist who then gets on stage and you are given like this Spider-Man suit, this Tony Stark suit. And when that is punctured, or like you're pushed out of the way, or like a show, your show doesn't draw as well or whatever, like that can be very disheartening because it can kind of somehow puncture this illusion, like Plato's allegory of the cave, like the shadows flickering on the back of the wall can get covered up. And that's really disorienting. And I think about in terms of like how it can feel unjust and feel random and feel unfair. And the terms of Sick Kids record, that record I felt like was like a platinum sounding record. It had so much heart, great hooks, but it's like, we both learned that sometimes you make the best record you can, you're not going to instantly be 5 mics in the source, and it's like, and that could be disheartening because it like the illusion is something that sometimes feels very mercurial, and you know what I mean?
Of course, Lars, of course, dude. I mean, we all know somebody that's like, for me, it forced me to kind of whittle down why I really do this. And it never started to be a star. It truly didn't. I think a lot of people, that might be the main motivation. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but for me, it really was about expressing things that were kind of locked inside that I needed to express. And it felt good to do that. When you come alive, when a song comes together, I mean, your hair stands up, and that's why I did it. And because we all know somebody that's immensely talented that just, it didn't line up for them. There's so much luck involved. There's so many, as well as hard work, sacrifice, all those things. But then also there's like no rhyme or reason to it. And you can make a record that is incredible. It hits all the notches, right? Scratches all the itches. There's been, dude, let me tell you, when Coheed signed to Sony, I had already been on a major label, but not in this capacity. Like we had juice, like every label was trying to sign us. So it was, when I signed to Universal as a kid with my other band, we were lucky to be signed. There was no other labels really. With Coheed, it was a different experience, and they were not in a bad way, but they were kind of trying to show off, and they let us go through their catalogs to take all the records we wanted, back when people had CDs still. And like I'd have to dig through 150 records to even find one that I heard of.
Oh, wow.
And it dawned on me just how much stuff they put out that never makes a mark. And then I'm thinking, like, they spend millions on market research. This is back when labels have too much. They don't even know what to do with all the money. Well, actually, when Coheed signed, it was kind of the last little bit of that, because this wasn't like the 80s or the 90s, but they spend all this money on market research, and they have this record. Production-wise, it's there. It's got the hooks, but it just doesn't stick. In fact, Doug Morris, the president of Universal, not with Coheed, with my other band as a kid, that's what he told me. 16, 17-year-old kid, he told me, he said, we spend all this money on market research. I should have led with this story, but and he said, at the end of the day, we throw it against the wall, and some shit sticks and some shit doesn't. And it's like, oh my God, I've dedicated my whole life to this thing. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And, with Sick Kids not like performing the way it was, now I wouldn't change it for anything, but it was a hard lesson to learn. And all careers kind of ebb and flow. Like you had brought up, a show doesn't draw like it did. They say, God, last time we were here, there was 5,000 people. Now there's only 3. It's like, hey, bonehead, there's 3,000 people here. Shut up. You know, it's like anybody that gets to do this is lucky. And I know that. I wouldn't be able to say that at 25. You know, at 25, I was probably took a lot of this for granted. Had the nerve to complain. I want to go home. I'm tired. I want to go home. And it's like, now I see just how lucky I am that I get to do this. And it's because I've seen so many people that deserve this that didn't get it. I know people that are so talented and it just didn't line up. That luck, that stroke of luck didn't befall them. And it can be heartbreaking, but I guess it's just like the way of the world and this business of show that we find ourselves in. Well,
or also, Josh, at this point, like we're both in this club of people who've been doing this for 20 years plus, and there's people who have had this success, but it didn't last more than a year or two, and so that is something I get more and more grateful for every year as nerdcore has continued to be this like underground thing that people keep finding out about, and we're in this position where because Frenelite says this a lot, and I think it's funny, because we were never cool or never really mainstream in any way, we never became uncool.
I love that, dude. Frontalot he seems like such a dope dude. I've had like brief interactions with him, like on Twitter and whatnot, but he seems awesome, dude. And like his music is bananas, dude. Like he's such a talented dude. Like I love that guy. I don't think he realizes what a big fan I am of his. That's it. Yeah, man. I mean, and Coheed kind of dude. Coheed had a moment where it was like all the big label guys were coming around and like, it wasn't unheard of to think like, oh, maybe they'll be the next big band. And I say, thank God it didn't happen. You know, it's like, we got plenty big, dude. Like we sold like 6 million records altogether. It's like,
oh my God.
But imagine like if it had broke.
It's pretty big though, Josh. That's pretty huge.
No. But hey, there's a difference between, hey man, every time I leave the house and somebody asks me what band I'm in, where I live in Glenmont, New York, I say, oh, it's a band called Coheed Cambria. And they're like, who? What? And then they tell me, you got to come and play my uncle's bar over in Riverdale. You're going to love it, dude. And I'm like, and then how do you like say like, well, because I do have some pride, you know, it's like, well, you know, we normally, I don't know, man. You know, I usually just try to keep it pretty cool. But no, dude, that is huge. That's bigger than I could have ever realistically dreamed.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Oh, my God, it's big. But I just mean, imagine if it broke in a way that, like, I don't know, like the big guy, Fall Out Boy. I mean, clearly there's a different My Chemical Romance, you know, Panic at the Disco even. Like, dude, I went to see Panic at the Disco last year in Albany on a Tuesday night, sold out, 17,000 people. I mean, my man flew over the crowd in a piano, dude. He flew. I thought I was at an Elton John show. It's like one of the best shows I've ever seen. Yeah. And I was just floored. Yeah. I just mean, if it had, I have this feeling that on another plane of existence, Coheed might have broken like that. And now I drive for UPS or I work at the post office. I do something else. Because if it had become that thing, that super cool thing, not this kind of personal, because we share a connection with the fans that I think is really unique. And I think it's the reason that we're a band. I think like through all the ups and downs and all the bullshit, that exchange of energy of when we're on stage, it means so much to us. And I know it means a lot to them. And it's something, it's hard to articulate. I've been trying for years and I always goof it up, but it's something special. I know that. That's what I know. That's really special and really, really powerful. And I'm so thankful that we didn't become that band that got that big. And I just have a feeling it'd be over if it was. It would have been discarded like so many things are, even though every band I brought up is still killing it to this day. Like Mike Ham just got back together and Fall Out Boy and Panic. But I'm just thankful that it never kind of moved past whatever that needle mark is, right? To whatever big is, because I don't want to make it sound, I mean, please let me be clear. Coheed has achieved things that in my wildest dreams I could not have been like prepared for or ever really thought would happen. But, you know, that upper echelon, I'm thankful that it didn't hit that because I have a feeling it would be over for us. I mean, dude, I see bands that were like enormous, bigger than Coheed by far, that, you know, they go out on tour and do their 10-year anniversary or whatever, and there's 200 people there. And it's like, wow, like, this meant something to people, and then it was just discarded. And that's a scary notion, man. That's like, holy shit. And then it makes me think, how lucky are we that we're still here? I'm 40 years old, and we had our biggest year touring ticket sales wise in 2018. You know, last year on the headliner with Mastodon, it was like, holy shit, we're like comfortably in these amphitheaters. This is crazy.
We both found ourselves in this pocket of, it's like millennial nostalgia, right? It's like looking back at a world before this.
Totally.
Before everything went crazy. And so it's kind of cool to be associated with the first decade of this century in a way. Don't you think so?
Yeah, dude. And also like the fact that we've survived long enough that we can reap the benefits of nostalgia.
Right.
I'll take that. Right. I'm proud of that, dude. Like, like there's no question. We did a tour with Taking Back Sunday. It was a co-headliner in 2018. I pushed for the tour hard. You know why? Because I'm a huge fan of Taking Back Sunday. I really love the band. I like the guys a lot. No one could have been prepared for like how successful the tour was. I mean, this is what I mean. Coheed is not used to playing to 11,000 people. We had like 4 or 5 shows that drew over 10,000 people, but we tapped into the nostalgia. Like I'd talk to people and they'd be like, dude, haven't been to a show in 4 years. I had to come out for this one. And I was like, well, that's awesome. We've been around long enough that we can like be part of that thing where, oh, I remember this from high school. I love that. Again, to me, it's like a point of pride. Surviving in this business is almost impossible. It's almost impossible. I can't believe here me and you are all these years later. Did you really think? Maybe you did, dude. My life was in such like disarray when we were on Warped Tour. It makes me giddy to think that we're standing here a decade later talking about still doing our thing, man.
Yeah, it's time.
Come on, Lars. That is the best, dude. Well, even if it all ends right now, we did it, dude. We did it. And you know, man, carved out something for ourselves with art. And I'm proud of you. I know you're proud of me. I'm proud of us. I think it's really incredible.
Yeah, man. I agree, Josh. And I think the other cool thing is the inspiration that we can then pass on to the younger kids who see this like way you and I amalgamated and did interesting things with hip hop and you with different metal and rock stuff, like being able to think about how we both have made unorthodox, non-commercial music in a way that kind of found a market. I mean, I say that in a good way, right? Like unique music.
Yeah.
And to be able to, I think being original is important. And I'm not just trying to make us both feel like awesome, but like being original is important. And we both
Hell
did
yes,
that.
it's important. Yeah, man. And you know, it's like being original is also, I mean, it's hard in a way, but it's also not like I remember making my first record and I was impressionable, man. Like that record came out in 2005, but dude, a lot of that stuff was recorded in like 2001. I mean,
wow.
Yeah. And I was like really, looking up to the people that I was around, you know, like I was finally being taken seriously. For years, I would say like, no, I'm a rapper. And it'd be like, all right, you know, I'd come to the session and hang out for 9 hours, hoping to get a 4-bar part. Let me prove myself. And it just would never happen. I'd come again the next time. I'm sitting there. Everybody's just smoking weed for hours. And so am I. I'm not going to, you know, I'm hanging out, but like never get that chance. And then all of a sudden, like these people were like, hey, you know what? You're all right. We're going to get in the studio with you. And, you know, I was definitely pushed to sound kind of like what was popular, which was like kind of Dre-y beats, but like with an Eminem thing, which wasn't hard for me. Like I was a huge Eminem fan. But like there's so much more, it's so much more gratifying and scary. It's gratifying and terrifying. It's all the fines. Every fine you can think of, it's all to be original. And I kind of had to learn that. I learned a little bit of that on Friends and Nervous Breakdowns. I learned a lot of that on Sick Kids. And it's something I carry with me to this day. And of course it's important, Lars. It's so important to be original, man. I think kids are original, dude. I think the reason like my old ass hears some things and is like, what the fuck is this? Is because it's original.
Right.
And it's not for me. And Ernie is good at like teaching me, dude, like Ernie is forever 21, dude. He's that store. He's that clothing store. Right. He's just like, he understands, man. Like, hey, I'm getting old and that's why this shit doesn't make sense to me. Let me take a step back. Let me try to like listen to this and imagine like who it's speaking to and like who it's for kids, man. It's for young people, and young people are filled with, you know, the things that I hate to say, they start to die down. Like I'm 40 years old. I'm trying to hang on to some of my piss and vinegar. I'm trying to hang on to some of my, whatever, those things that fire inside you. But sometimes I just want to go to bed, man, because I'm 40, dog. I'm tired. But Ernie, I've learned so much from Ern too, man. I mean, he's such a good guy. I'm speaking of DJ Dirty Ern, who's well known in the Coheed community, and just he has a podcast called Table Scraps with a buddy of his, Teddy. They do a clothing company, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, he's turned me on to a lot of young music, and I don't know, it kind of landed for me that it's not for me, but this is for kids. And that's who I was speaking to when I was that age, when I was 20 years old writing music. It was for people my age going through similar experiences to me. It was like, I wasn't thinking about, I wonder what my dad's friends are going to think of this song. No, of course not.
Right.
And I think kids are original, and it's like blood on the dance floor, dude. When I was watching that stuff, that's what I thought. And like, I hate to keep bringing them up, but I was like, oh, I must be too old for this. And that was original. It was crazy, but it was pretty original. But there's some things that have come out that have been like, who's that dude, Juice WRLD? Like, some of that stuff I thought is really good. And
yeah,
I was around some older people my age, and they were like, oh man, he just stole this song. And I was like, ew, dude. Listen to yourself. He just stole. You're talking about the same sampling techniques that are on our favorite records. What are you talking about?
Right.
And but to each their own. But I believe in the kids, man. I'm always going to believe. I remember Tom York said years ago. He said, "I'm not excited about what Radiohead's going to do next. I'm excited about what some 15-year-old kid is doing in his bedroom right now, and what he's going to put out." Like. That sounded more sexually suggestive than I meant it. He meant music-wise, like what some 15-year-old kid is creating right now and what he's going to put out. And that's like a sentiment I really embody. Like, I'm excited to see what kids are going to come out with, where the next music wave goes, where it takes us. And I think that's just like a more positive place to exist than, I don't know, the old bitter curmudgeon. Everything sucks. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not going to be that guy. There's always something that can speak to you out there. And sometimes I got to do some digging, but I always seem to find it. And I think there's a lot of originality with the kids, a lot.
Well, and when you become that person who's like, oh, hip hop stopped being good in 95, blah, 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 then you don't want to make music anymore. And then you kind of give up. Like, it's your life force. I think you have to always be open to it. And you have to be honest if you don't like it. But yeah, I try to stay up on that stuff too. I read this interesting article about how the SoundCloud mumble rap thing that started a few years ago, because it's not so concise and distinct and more emotional and more kind of vague, it has the same resonance that when Nirvana came out, where with Kurt Cobain, you couldn't really understand every lyric, but you got the vibe. And that was like a backlash to the 80s hair metal stuff. So like, this has kind of been a backlash to like the super lyrical, clear Eminem era of rap, right? That is more about the emotion and kind of fungible like beats and everything. And that is like what happens with music. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, dude. I think that's super interesting. And I dig it, dude. I mean, like, when Nirvana came out, you had like this band down the street from me would tell us kids that Nirvana sucked because Kurt didn't play good solos.
Wow.
And it's like, that's what you take away from that song that like that song that just like instantly burrowed into my heart. When I watched Smells Like Teen Spirit, I'm like a kid and it came on MTV. I knew I'd never forget that song. Yeah. And I knew I had to hear it again. And then the guy from the metal band down the street, I couldn't believe he didn't like it. We ran up to him like, have you heard this? He's like, that guy sucks. He can't even play a solo. And I was just like, ew, dude. I'm so glad that happened because it was a real like teaching moment now looking back later in life, but you bring up such an interesting point, dude. Like, if everything is kind of like cyclical, but it all answers itself in a way. And if that's kind of the answer to super technical, ultra lyrical, well, I kind of dig that, especially when you liken it to a Nirvana or something like that the vibe and the energy was more importance was kind of placed on that. Now, don't get me wrong, dude. Like, I don't like every SoundCloud rap. Most of the new stuff I hear, I don't like. I mean, I'm pretty picky about this stuff. I can be a bit of a snob, but there's some shit that I've heard that's like, whoa, this is like impact. A melody catches you. Melody could go by 10 people, not one person. It doesn't, but the one person it catches, it's like, it's powerful, man. It's like, I mean, that's why we do this. Why I do this, that feeling. And that's happened with some new artists and, I'm into it. But who knows what in 5 years? I mean, things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
In 5 years, it could be something totally different. We're back to like ultra lyrical. I mean, picture somebody even like in 2010, was it like Flo Rida? That straight pop star, but that stuff was all like super, like cadence wise, like very technical. It was all like very, all the cadences were very melodic in their rhythms and whatnot. And now it's like we get the total opposite of that. And it's on one hand, I do hear some mumble rappers where I'm like, oh man, rappers nowadays, they don't even need to have rhythm. Like there's no even rhythm to it at all. But maybe thinking about it, it's a neat thought experiment to kind of imagine it with your words running through my head. Like, oh, maybe this is the answer to something. And, or perhaps it's not. And maybe the guy really has no rhythm and he sucks. That's fine. If it speaks to people, it speaks to people. If anyone finds an audience, I say more power to them, you know? If you speak to people and it resonates, go get it, kid, you know?
Well, and also the other thing is heroin, right? Like that was a big part of Nirvana and a big part of the SoundCloud, like the horrible epidemic with the
totally, dude,
pills.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, man. I wanted also to as the last topic, we were texting about this, and I want to end the last few minutes of our interview talking about this. I know that you are a big fan of Friday the 13th as a franchise. Is that correct?
Oh, big time. Oh, yeah, of course.
And you've used like the Jason mask in some of your merch. Is that true? Is there like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Jason mask. We've used, I did a show on Halloween one year, and we took the poster from Halloween, and we did these shirts, and it was such a thrill for us, dude. Like, Weerd Science isn't big enough. We don't do giant runs of shirts, but they sold right out. And it was the night he came home, which is like the tagline for Halloween.
That's
so
tight.
We did a Jason one where it's Jason with the big nerdy glasses. And we did a Freddy one where it's my face on Freddy. What a thrill for me. Those shirts live in my closet. I'll never get rid of them. I sometimes pull them out and look at them because it's just so thrilling to me. But, you know, I'm a giant horror fan, but sometimes I get into talks with people that are like big time underground horror fans, and they're bringing up shit that I never even heard of. But yeah, these are like the pillars of like 80s horror taste. Elm Street, Michael Myers, Jason. And yeah, I know way too much about this stuff. I mean, this stuff was hugely important to me as a kid. It was music and horror movies. That's what it was for me as a kid growing up. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Well, it's interesting researching. I watched it the other day, and I learned that I was like kept expecting him to jump out with the mask. You don't see the mask as a reference to him until the third one, right?
No, it's the third one, and it's like 45 minutes into the third one, dude. They don't even come out of the gate with the mask. That's why people get confused, I think. Halloween had already presented the kind of faceless white mask.
Right.
Now, if you were to look at the dates, you'd be like, oh, no, Friday the 13th came out long before Halloween. But no, dude, they totally kind of bit Halloween. Now, I wasn't really like a conscious being. You know, I was like 4 years old at this time, so I don't remember it like as it happened. But that's what I gather. I'd hate to be wrong right now. You fans would kill me. My fans would kill me. But I always took it as Halloween had kind of, you know, burst out of the gate with this kind of soulless white mask, and then Friday the 13th said, oh, well, that's great, we'll do that. If you learn a lot about the Friday the 13th movies, I think the people that make them I think sometimes they just didn't take them all that seriously, and like I think they were like, oh, throw this mask on him, and then it became totally iconic. And it's like there's this great interview with the director of Jason Goes to Hell, which is technically it's Friday the 13th Part 9, but after Part 8, Paramount sold it to New Line Cinema. Now, New Line, famous for working with Wes Craven and putting out the Nightmare on Elm Street. So now Freddy and Jason were under the same production house. And their first movie was Jason Goes to Hell. The often maligned, fans hate it. It's one of my favorite ones. I have I won't bore you with the details, but like a very specific like things that happened and kind of fell in place of why I love that movie so much. They tried to do something completely different, but Sean Cunningham, who was the producer of the original Friday the 13th, he had one direct order to the director, Adam Marcus, who, mind you, had directed a music video and that's it, had no movies under his belt. This was his first movie, this like, to him, huge budget horror movie. But Sean Cunningham said, get that damn mask out of my movie. If you wanted the podcast to go on for another 4 hours, this is what you do. You just bring up Jason and just you go put the phone down and I'll just go for hours because I love this stuff, dude. I really do. I just, as a kid, man, like I just sit there and read about it all the time. And I don't know why. Nothing covered in Jason Voorhees tattoo. It like spoke to me. And it's weirdly like kids weren't into it as much as me and my friends. Like the kids on the playground and stuff, and like, you know, the popular kids or the kids doing the picking on, they weren't really into it like us. So it felt like ours, you know, and like this was the shit we were into. And the girls would be like, you guys are weird. And it made us only want to dive in further, you know, and get into more horror movies, and then started watching like some underground stuff. And yeah, it's just something that speaks to me, and it's in there forever, dude. I mean, they have a fan forever. I have a room in my house just littered with like expensive busts of like, you know, Jason Voorhees from 7 and 9. And I have, I don't know, 28 masks. And there's people with collections that'll blow your mind. Mine's not one of those. But, you know, for a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of expendable income, I'm always excited to plop down $1,200 on a big, giant, life-size Jason that can just hang out in my house. My wife and daughter, not as psyched as me, but I love it. I really love it.
Well, okay, so Jason's origin story, it's interesting watching the first movie because the mom is doing, you don't know who's doing the murders, and the scene at the, like, spoiler alert, anyone who hasn't seen it, we're going to spoil a lot of the plot right here. So the girl who survives, she gets pulled off from the boat into the water, right? And then you don't know if it's a dream or not, but then you realize the cops talking about it, you realize it probably wasn't a dream. So the question becomes, was it the mom trying to avenge her son's death because of the irresponsible counselors, or was it Jason doing most of the murders? Is there a theory on this?
No, dude, and you bring up an interesting point. I mean, I think, so the story is a bit, like, ominous, dude. I think, you know, they had this cheap horror movie that ended up being a monster hit, and they said, oh, shit, we got to make a part 2. We've got to make a part 2.
Because it made so much money. I saw that it, like, made, like, 10, 20 times its budget. Yeah,
and they had to keep it going. So the mom was taking revenge for Jason dying. But if Jason jumped out of the lake, then Jason never really died. So you bring up a really interesting point. But so the story goes, as the movies progress, that Jason actually saw his mother be beheaded.
Okay. How
was he out there living? I don't know. He was apparently just became like a feral water monster or something. He's just hanging out there in the lake. I had this like idea for like a Jason movie in the modern era where they actually they found the bones of young Jason, and they realized it was actually never Jason Voorhees doing the killing. It was some demon. But like the pain that Jason had endured is what awoke this demon. And that's why it answers to the name Jason. I don't know. I thought it could be cool. Maybe really the fans would probably hate it. I think the fans just want like kids go to the camp and get fucking bludgeoned. And but I thought something like that would be cool. But God, dude, it's a really interesting, again, like a thought experiment to kind of go through how this franchise, because yeah, the mask, the iconic mask, not even a part of it till part 3. How strange, right? It's like so synonymous with the series, but It's not even part of it. 2 full movies, like, 2.5 full movies, excuse me. Because in part 2, Jason wears a pillowcase, and he's very much human in part 2. Like, he's not, he's deformed and he's feral, but like a cop is like looking through the woods and goes into this shack, and you see Jason has a bathroom. He eats food. He wears his overalls. He had to button his overall. Like, he's way more human. Same thing is true in part 3. I would argue that Jason, he is undead. He's undead-ish in 4, because at the end of part 3, he gets an axe. He gets hung. This guy's dead, right? There's a bunch of cops that come in the beginning of 4. They take him off to the hospital. I would think one of those EMS guys looked for a heartbeat, one of the doctors, something. So he's technically undead, but he's not truly undead, zombified Jason till part 6.
So he becomes a zombie eventually.
Oh, complete zombie. Dude, Jason Lives, which is part 6. So again, Lars, you're going to have all this spoiled for you. Part 5, he's not in. Part 5 is called A New Beginning. Again, just another like really, I don't know, misguided attempt by the producers and the people in charge to try to get Jason out of their movies. Like, they hate Jason, but that's what the fans want.
He's not in it. What's the movie about? Is it he not in it in that, like, he's not in the first one, it's shot from his angle, or he's not in it at all?
Oh, he's not in it. It's a different killer. Now, what? Tommy Jarvis, that's why it's called A New Beginning. It turns out there's, in part 4, Corey Feldman is in it. I always it's Corey Feldman. And he's great. Part 4 was incredible. Part 4 is like the benchmark early Friday movie that's incredible. I mean, Part 2 is really great too.
It's like
3 is actually one of my
Coheed
least
record. It took
dude, that 4, which is actually our 3rd Coheed record, but I know what you mean. Yeah. I know. Let's make it just extra confusing. So yeah, Part 4 was called The Final Chapter. This was supposed to be the last one. We kept hearing that, but and they kill Jason in that. Corey Feldman, he's a young kid at the time. He was great in it. And Jason looked just, Tom Savini, I believe, did like the effects and stuff. And there's this powerful scene where like the machete hits his head and he falls down. I mean, the stuff looked incredible. I mean, obviously it's all practical. This is the 80s, but this is a great one. But it followed along the same lines, kids at a camp. And although it opened up in a hospital, that was different. Jason's in a hospital and he kind of makes his way out of there. That's when that's when I, as a kid, said like, oh, he's unkillable. And you kind of knew that, but like he would bleed when you hit him. If you were to shoot him, it would hurt, like there'd be blood and stuff. And he also, Lars, ran. He ran in 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like it's the slow walking Jason as you run and can't escape did not fully happen until Part 6. And longtime fans of the series will argue this with me. And I'll go to the game, I'll go to the tape, and we can talk about it. We can see he runs in every single. Well, he's not in 1, but in 2, 3, and 4, he runs. In 6 is when it really started. The walking, the kind of emotionless, just walking. Even now, you're running and you're falling and whatever. But so Part 5, he's not in. It's an imposter killer. And I remember watching it. And there are, though, some great scenes. The reason I bring up Corey Feldman, because that's a returning character. That doesn't happen a whole lot in the Jason lexicon here, in the tapestry of the Friday the 13th realm. Returning characters weren't a big thing. You had the girl from Part 1 is in Part 2, but then she's quickly dispersed of. Corey Feldman isn't in it. He does a guest role in 5. He has these dream sequences where Jason returns. Those are awesome. Now that's a maggoty-filled corpse. But the killer in Part 5 is not. It's a guy named Roy who watched his son get murdered at a children's home and decided to kind of cop Jason's whole steez to kill people, I guess. Which, again, I don't think anybody was particularly psyched on that as a plot device. So, but then what it did, and maybe they're smarter than me because it set him up to do Part 6, Jason Lives. Probably the most enjoyable one in the series, honestly. It's so good. It's funny. And Jason is back. And there's no question now. He's been dead for years. A good old lightning bolt brought him back. And he's more, as Tommy Jarvis says, 3rd movie with Tommy Jarvis, different actor in every movie, but whatever. He says to the sheriff, Jason's back and he's more powerful than ever. And he was. Now we're on to full undead, zombie, unkillable, can't stop Jason. Nothing about this rotten corpse with a mask on is human. And then you get Part 7 where he fights a psychic girl, Jason versus Tina, and it's awesome. It's flipping awesome. It also marks the beginning of Kane Hodder's tenure as Jason, who really, see, in Part 6, a guy named C.J. Graham played Jason, and he did great. It was awesome. Jason was he was like Tim Allen from Tool Time. He had his tool belt on. He had gloves and shit. He had like all kinds of stuff to use. And in 7, he's just a rotten mess monster. He's a full monster, dude. And then 8, he goes to Manhattan. They tried to do something different. Paramount sells it to New Line. They do 9. People hate it. They do 10. I hate it. And then they did the remake, and now we sit patiently waiting for another movie. They got to figure out, there's like court battles and stuff over who owns the character or the intellectual property. But God, you've got a fan base here. Every year there's a Friday the 13th fan that's dying or succumbing to disease, something that they don't get to see one more movie. Figure it out. You've got $100 million movie here just waiting. Are those that easy to come by that you have to not make it? We're dying for another one. When did the remake come out? 2009? I mean, dude, it's forever ago. And they did pretty good. It was awesome.
Michael Bay worked on that, right? He produced it.
Yeah, well, his production company worked on it. Yeah. But, dude, that's one of the ones that they did pretty good. They kind of incorporated 1 through 4 in a way. It wasn't the best movie in the world, but, dude, you know what? Credit where credit is due, man. Like, they did a good job. I'll tell you what, it was a far sight better than the Nightmare on Elm Street remake by leaps and bounds. I wanted a sequel, and they didn't do it, though.
Let me ask you something. So, do you know Alan Moore's Swamp Thing? Are you familiar with this saga?
I mean, I have never seen it. I know what it is and I know about it, and I have a lot of friends that like it, but I've never seen it.
So can I give you a little bit of the plot, or do you not want me?
Of course. No.
Okay.
I'm one of the rare people that does not mind that.
Okay, cool. So I've been reading it because I want to do an Alan Moore album, because he did The Watchmen and like all sorts of The Killing Joke, the dark, Batman story.
Yeah, right on. Oh, that's awesome.
I wanted to ask you this because it reminded me of the Jason origin story. So this guy's doing research on a way to make plants more nutritious and more sustainable, and like be like food that people could eat to live forever. And then this guy comes and blows up his lab because he's trying to sabotage it, because it's like a threat to his company. So the guy gets thrown into the swamp, like in Louisiana or Florida, and his research gets thrown into the swamp. And the crazy reveal is that the algae and all the muck and everything takes the bones of the person and then becomes the person, but it's not the person. Instead of the person becoming like a swamp monster, the swamp becomes the person who is now gone, but then he's anthropomorphized and has this constant ennui that he is not going to be human. He'll never find love, but he has the shell of this person, but he doesn't have a soul. It's just like the flora of the pond has become this person. So I was thinking like it's a similar origin story, because the question of the origin of Jason, it's like, did he become the lake? Like, is he the lake? Is he the memory?
Lars, you're blowing my mind right now, dude, because that was kind of my idea for like, they found the bones
right
at the bottom of the lake. Like Jason did die and was rotten. And that was kind of thing, like not a demon, but like the essence of the lake and all that hurt and anger took a human form. Or a human-ish form. It's kind of in that world. That's what I was thinking when you're telling me that. I'm like, oh, it's kind of
it's very Swamp Thing.
That's the story of Swamp Thing, dude. That's incredible.
It's a great story. And so then the reason why it's so revered and critically acclaimed is because Alan Moore, he's so good with the intellectual element, and like they say he modernized comics because he made it so it's like not just good versus evil. It's this whole idea of what does it mean to be human, like. The Watchmen, like the idea of like what is good, what is bad, what happens when you're a superhero whose time is up. Swamp Thing is like what happens when you are the result of your life's work that has been consumed by like kind of like Moby Dick, like an uncaring aquatic reality through which your spirit lives, but it's not your spirit, and so that's dark. And so I feel like Jason, I wanted to ask you about this, like. Jason's motivation for killing, is it because he misses his youth from this beautiful summer camp Crystal Lake? Like there's something that resonates with like his feeling of longing? Is he just evil?
No. I think, dude, you bring up a really good point, and I think it kind of dances around. I think the home base reason was, if you had to put like a real kind of black and white reason on it, it was that he saw his mom get murdered. But then, he's punishing the kids at the older kids, the teenagers or the young adults at the camp for essentially taking his life by their own negligence. That's the home base story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think as a kid, especially too, I would kind of make my own deep assumptions and like pontificate and think about Jason and his motivations. It got weirdly like, how do I say, like weirdly kind of hard, right Christian, like if you did the drugs you died, if you had sex you died, but that's just kind of, I don't think that was on purpose. I think that's just part of but that's the home base reason. Now I'm sure there's all kinds of threads that we could kind of get into and dig in around there, but I'm just so blown away right now by Swamp Thing, dude. I've always been aware of Swamp Thing. I think I watched the old show. I love the Watchmen. I'm not a huge comic guy. Watchmen is incredible. I loved the movie. I know a lot of the fans of the comics, like I hear my friends that are big into it. They didn't love the movie, some of them as much as I did. I thought the movie was incredible. I loved it so much. Then I read the comic. I read the comic after the movie. Loved the graphic novel. Claude actually gave me his copy. He's like, if you haven't read this, you need to read this. And it was unbelievable. Then the HBO show. What did you think of that? So
I'll admit I haven't watched it yet, but like Mega Ran tells me I need to, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible, dude. It's
like in the future, right? It takes place after.
Yeah, and I was worried. I'm like, well, I know the stuff now. Like, is this gonna? It holds up in a way it's creative. It's so good. I really couldn't have enjoyed it more, dude. I did it in like 2 days, just right through because I loved it so much.
And so Rorschach is now like a alt-right kind of character? He becomes a villain?
Dude, you got to just watch it.
Okay.
It's on HBO Go, dude. Like, you've got to watch it right away. It was so good. I'm just the fact that I didn't even know that Alan Moore did these things. Like, I guarantee you know this story so much deeper than I do, but I just know that Watchmen, the show, the HBO show, like, they did it in a way that was not just creative and I guess like modern in a way. Like, it had heart. There were some tears. I would implore you to just watch it. Cool. Also, I'm a little intimidated by your knowledge of it because I'll probably mess something up. And I don't want to ruin it for you, honestly. Like, you should watch it, dude. Yeah. It's that good. Like, I bet you and your lady pop it on. You'll love it. Dude, guess what I'm doing right now? Game of Thrones for the first time. And I never saw it before. And I just finished season 5 last night. And my heart is broken, dude. Like, I am broken inside. It's John, I don't want to, it's old enough that I think spoilers don't spoil anything for me, but every night I get to like immerse myself in this world. And this is why I saved it, dude. This is why I saved Game of Thrones. I knew I would like it, but it just wasn't time. And now after, I don't know if you heard, like, my mom died and then my 2 grandfathers died all within 3 months. Hence why I'm at my grandmother's house right now. Just been trying to spend time with her. She was like my other mom when I was a kid, and she lost her daughter and her husband in a month. It's been crazy. But sorry, man. You know what, man? My grandmother had a really wonderful speech at my mom's service, and she said, I know my daughter's in a better place. If you don't believe that, that's your problem, but life goes on. And so do we. And it was powerful. She had me and my brother on her arm, and she stood up there in front of everybody and said that. And she's a really spunky lady. She's 88 and filled with piss and vinegar. She's knocking on the door right now, actually. Hi, man. I was just talking about you. I miss you too, Nanny. I'll be out in a minute. I'm doing my interview. Remember I told you I had my interview? Okie dokie. Nope, I didn't fall asleep. It's only 104 degrees in here. I'm like pouring sweat in here. It's amazing. But getting to, what a gift that every night, me and my wife, we won't watch it without each other. We get to sit down and like immerse ourselves in this world that we're interested. It's just such a gift, dude. And I do love it. And the show will break your heart. You've seen Game of Thrones, I presume. Yeah,
I don't know. Have you ever, I have a song about Daenerys, and we did a music video that's like a tribute to Westeros.
Oh, dude, I got to check it out. I probably didn't watch because I never knew anything about Game of Thrones. Like, we started this 2 weeks ago and we're already done with season 5. Like, we do. That's tight. There's been nights we stay up till 3 a.m. because we can't stop. We're like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's great. The production's so good, man. What happens at the end of season 5, you said?
Yeah, season 5, Jon Snow dies.
Oh.
For the watch. And I just couldn't believe it, dude. I could not believe it. We've made a tangible effort to not talk about the show because now I get it. After 10 years, spoilers are on you. They're not on. They're on me. They're not on the public at large, right? But I made a comment on Facebook to my close friends. Wow, we're going to finally start Game of Thrones. We're excited. And 3 different close friends of mine commented, "Just wait till episode 9, bro." And I'm like, why would you say that? Yeah. If you're going to be a spoiler, spoil the shit.
That's not helpful.
Why would you say anything? I know. So now I know something crazy happens. Still took me by surprise. And then last night, dude, I couldn't believe my eyes. I cried a little bit, dude. Yeah. I was like, what? I'm such a softie when it comes. I mean, I want to be immersed. Music, art, movies. It's about dredging up feelings, right? Like, it's about feeling it. And I could not believe it. The Red Wedding, same thing. You're like crying. I cry every other episode of Game of Thrones, but like, dude, I really thought I had the show pegged, and I thought Jon Snow would be the ultimate, the last one standing. And when he died, even after the second stab, I'm like, no, it's not going to kill him. They're just scaring us with this. And then so I don't know what happens, dude. I've like stayed pretty ignorant in terms of Game of Thrones. Like, I'd heard the phrase Red Wedding before, but I had no idea. I wasn't thinking of it during that scene. Right. And when all that shit happened, it just, it blew my mind. So I'm a big, big fan of the show. And I feel really lucky that I get this escape. And I also get to feel and kind of, I think that's healthy and probably cathartic on some level. But I would I beg you as a friend to go in on Watchmen, especially with your knowledge. I think you're really going to like it.
That's what's up. I'll watch it and then I'll talk to you about it, and that's tight.
Good morning, children. Children, please sit down. You all know me. Superintendent GTB, we have something extra special this morning. Hey, sit down. Gracie, Xavier, there's not gonna be any of that. Sit down. We have two very special professors with us today, MC Lars and Weerd Science. They're here to teach all of us how to be indie rappers.
Here's a little rap about the steps that it takes to be an indie rapper. Who knows, one day one of the greats. I'm not saying that it's easy, but these steps could help. If you follow them close, you can carve out a career for yourself. Step one, get your hide ready to tour in a van. The limelight might sparkle, but it's not real, man. Step two, you gotta flood the internet with material. Go serial till it spreads like venereal. Step three, you gotta keep a close eye on your ticket stubs. The only bottles you'll be popping is the water from the club. Step four, you can forget about the champagne and fillets, cause it's more like Tostitos and old PB&J. Step five, this is probably one of the most important. Never sign to a major and let your heart get extorted. Step six, you gotta book all the shows that you can, and hopefully you get a chance to win the headliner's band. Step seven, never mind all the pointing and the laughing. Your girl won't be psyched, you spend all your time rapping. Step eight, remember hip-hop's about being true. Gotta go peace, Weerd Science, more work to do. How to be an indie rapper. Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science and MC Lars. If you follow our steps, you can go far. How to be an indie rapper. Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science and MC Lars. If you follow our steps, you can go far.
A is for the albatross, they call it day job. B is for the beats, make sure they sound way hot. C is for the cash you collect on the road. D is for the drives that you make to get to shows. E is for the energy on stage that you need. F is for the food, your band you need to feed. G is for the gross on merch that you get. H is for the half that goes to cost, don't get upset. I is for your income, also known as net. J is for the journey, who knows what to expect. K, keep the L off, M, major labels, N-O, never signed to one. P, keep your publishing. Q is for QuickBooks, R, say your receipts. S for social networking, T, technology. You understand that building takes time. V, viral videos can supplement your rhymes on your brand.com. W, use the web, no it takes X years, a lot of work and sweat. Y is for the yes, y'all on the mic. Z, zero compromise, you can stack that paper high. Be an indie rapper.
Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science
And MC Lars, if you follow our steps, you can go far. How to be an indie rapper.
Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science
And MC Lars, if you follow our steps, you can go far. We be ballin' on that indie rap tip. Got a knot in my pocket that I'm happy to split, because a strong PMA goes a really long way. When you find a niche to build from and you have a lot to say.
Find your own voice. That's a good point, Lars.
Thanks.
Whether you're rocking amphitheaters or playing half-filled bars, you gotta bring it every night. If there's 5 people there, there could be the 5 that spark and ignite your whole career.
Hustlenomics 2.0, slanging similes and metaphors. Alliterative assonance is what these kids all came here for. We grab it, tag it, sell it, brand it, put it on the internet. Interject and come correct, intercept that gingerbread.
Finding your own image in the business of copycats, it's hard. MC Lars, you copy that.
Copy
you
that.
figured out how to pay rent and be in this business. Make a song about that. I'm all ears like Will Smith is.
Be an indie rapper.
Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science
And MC Lars, if you follow our steps, you can go far. How to be an indie rapper.
Class is in session. Take note and learn your lesson. It's Weerd Science
And MC Lars, if you follow our steps, you can go far. That's it, kids. Be sure to do your homework for Monday's assignment. How to use tax write-offs as a way to charge things as business expenses that aren't really, and it's not that ethical.
Swamp Thing, Friday the 13th, Game of Thrones. Crazy interview. Thank you, Josh. Tune in next week for part 2, which is even longer. And it's a great discussion. We clear a lot of things up, and we catch up, and it's awesome. So thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace. Happy Labor Day.